This is the Surly Grognards for Tuesday, October 9th, 2012. This is Peter Bowman, and I'm joined, as usual, by my good friend and co-host, Eric Carlson. Eric, say hey, say hello to everybody.
Hello, everybody. How are you humans doing? You
Hmm.
can't answer me because you're listening to a recording or you're typing. So, ha.
Indeed, the Surly Grognards is recorded in front of a live,
Possibly, at, I'm going to call them all chatbots until I'm proved
yeah,
otherwise.
studio audience,
Yeah,
sort
they're
of.
they're they're chatbots.
At any rate, this week we're going to be talking about the challenges as they are, if they exist, which we will debate. Well, beyond the usual. Of running or playing in a superhero RPG. Um, and as usual, we'll try to save some time for the end of the show to answer your questions. If you have any questions you'd like answered, you can either, if you're watching us live, you can post them in the chat either during the show or towards the end of the show, or you can email us to our email address, surlygrognards@yahoo.com. That's surlygrognards @yahoo.com. I suppose you could also just you could tweet them to me at my Twitter place at MechaGM if you'd like. But anyways, I think it covers most ways you get the questions to us, right, Eric?
I think so, yeah.
Excellent. All right. Anyways, superhero RPGs. So this all came about because on Sunday when we were doing our brainstorming session for characters for the upcoming Mutants and Masterminds game I'm going to be running with Eric here, Nick, Liam, and Gav, which will be on Saturdays starting at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. Uh, not this Saturday, but the upcoming Saturday.
Yes, next Saturday.
This Saturday, I need time to actually get ready because a, it's a new system for me to jam, and b, I like having a couple of weeks actually do prep work.
Right.
At
This
any
also
rate,
lets me figure out exactly what my character is actually doing besides being Dr. Ironstrage.
or whatever his actual name ends up being.
Yeah.
At any rate, so the challenges of running a superhero game. Okay, for starters, I would suspect that the first sort of big challenge that a lot of people sort of would say is how do you actually make the game make it sort of a challenging game, I guess, in some ways for people who have superpowers. I mean, beyond well, you're fighting supervillains, but you can't just fight supervillains all the time because that will actually get a little repetitive.
Do you have any idea how hard it is to fight a government agency with superpowers? You can't do it. They just bureaucracy you to death. I know that happened in the Godlike game.
Indeed, that's the thing. I think some of this sort of spawned. Spoony did a one of his Counter Monkey vlogs about problems with running superhero games. I've not watched it yet. I really should.
Yeah,
But
I'm sort of the same thing, sort of kicking myself for not prepping by viewing this, but
it's sort of
yeah.
one of those things. I from what I've heard, he sort of rants on is kind of down on it, and I find that when he gets sort of ranty and down on something I disagree with him on, I tend to get more frustrated than I should. I don't know why,
In
because
general, I like Spoonie's counter monkey stuff, and when he starts getting ranty, I usually find it entertaining, but sometimes, no, I'm not going to get into a whole dissertation on
yeah,
Spoonie.
it
A guy I've
this
never met.
exactly, and also he's by and far definitively entitled to his opinions. I mean,
No, he's not. Only my opinions count.
no, they don't.
No.
At any rate, so uh, first, I mean, one of the big challenges, how do you challenge a superhero? And uh, there are a lot of things you can do to challenge superheroes, and not just direct confrontation. Um, I think the big thing for me really starts off with remembering the notion that a superhero is more than just the collection of his powers.
Yeah. This is an important thing to remember for any character in an RPG.
Absolutely. But I mean, it's true in it's true just in the comic book fiction. I mean, that's the thing. If you're reading comic books, the good ones really are more than just talking about the guy, the superhero, their powers and their villains. I mean, those are
Yeah.
really important things. But
Some of the best Hellboy stories are when he's dealing with the existential weirdness of being half demon and not being happy about it.
right. Oh, there's that. I mean,
there's there's all of X-Men that's not involving Magneto or Juggernaut.
right. Well, it's
Most
not
of
even
it's
just
soap opera.
right. Well, yeah. But I mean, I think we can sort of look at, there are a lot of people who really don't like Superman because he's so powerful you can't challenge him. And I think that's something of a misnomer. And it's true that in the hands of a not as skilled writer, that's a problem.
Mm,
But honestly, there's a reason that Superman's best villain is Lex Luthor.
yeah.
And
He
Lex Luthor,
bureaucracies you to death.
for the most part, doesn't have superpowers. He's just very smart and rich.
And it's all you really need to beat Superman.
Well, the big thing is that, Superman, part of the reason that Superman is, when done right, a compelling character is because of what he cares about and what he
Mm.
stands for and how he interacts with people. And it's not just,
Yeah, Superman's challenge isn't saving people, it's how do I save everybody?
right. It's, how do I save as many people as possible?
And how do I choose between them? That's
Right.
Superman's challenge.
That dilemma right there, how do I choose who to save, is the crux of Superman's, character.
Mm.
And it's when you're as powerful as he is, that and you can't save everybody, that can be a very powerful thing. And when handled right, Superman is one of the most interesting things to read, in my experience. Uh,
The, the the show Young Justice, which I'm going to plug even though a lot of people don't seem to like because I really enjoy it. It's a particular scene where you've got these invading aliens in a base, and it turns out it's been booby-trapped and it's going to blow. And that they're grabbing kidnapped humans and getting them out. And Superman stays behind and tries to convince the aliens to let him save them. And they won't go because they assume he's lying to them. And I thought it was a really good scene because Superman's sitting there trying to save these, honestly, they're dicks. They're
right,
bad guys, and he's desperately trying to get them to believe that he wants to save them too, and
yep,
then everything blows up.
right. I mean, that's the thing. Uh, when you have someone as powerful as Superman, the fact that he doesn't kill and goes out of his way not to,
Mm,
I mean, when you're as strong and as powerful as he with heat vision, that is as powerful as Superman's, that's actually difficult to, especially when you got people like Luthor. I mean,
yeah,
and like the Superman animated series that they did was brilliant. And I thought captured that. And he was really well done in JLU too. I
yep.
haven't read,
That whole family of shows is
oh
just
yeah, those
great,
are all incredible.
except for the Zeta Project, which I didn't like.
I missed that.
It wasn't very good,
Hmm. Okay, I'll,
and I'm going to get torn apart in the chat, but screw you guys.
I will take your word for it. I'll check it out at some point maybe and see what
I don't know. I
is.
just never got into it.
But at any rate, so the point of all of this sort of talking about Superman is the challenge for superheroes isn't just the villains in front of them. It's dealing with how it's what a good superhero RPG isn't just about the combat. I mean, there's going to be combat because honestly, superhero combat is a lot of fun.
It really is.
I mean, speaking of someone who's been playing Champions RPGs since 1987, I want to say no, later than that, 88, 89, somewhere in that area. I've been playing Champions since about 89, and I played GURP Supers a bit before that, from about 87, let's say. Um, so I've been playing superhero RPGs for, God, a long time. Not quite as long as I've been playing D&D, but I haven't been doing it all the time. But I played Champions pretty exclusively as an RPG for, basically from late high school up through all of college. So good and then after that, so a good decade where I played not much else outside of a couple of D&D second edition games and Champions. There's a group sci-fi game there too that I forgot about. So, but there was a lot of Champions in there. Um, and I, you know, unsurprisingly, was the GM for the vast majority of this. So I've had a lot of experience sort of, how to, challenging superheroes. And, part of it is, honestly, first off, you set them up against interesting and effective supervillains. Um, now, getting the balance right in most superhero RPGs can be tricky because most of the good ones are point-based systems which have a lot of flexibility, which means there are possibilities for getting the balance wrong. Um, as I mentioned, uh, as I've mentioned before, my friend Aaron was playing this character named Sanacht, who was an ancient Egyptian wizard, and we realized over the course of about 5 or 6 sessions that as Aaron figured out more and more about how to use his powers, like Aaron, the player, figured out how to use the powers he built into the character, we realized that the character was completely and utterly overpowered. And it got to the point where there was a fight against these powerful ice demon things that I had kept scaling things up so that, to make things challenging for the group because Aaron was increasingly making things, push, steamrollering stuff. And I realized that, things that could actually, affect Aaron would, almost one-shot some of the other party members. Um,
I've accidentally done this. I've also been the guy that almost gets one shot.
and that led to the discussion between me and Aaron me basically saying to Aaron, hey, Aaron, about Sonic. He said, yeah, I got to tone him down, don't I? I'm like, yeah. He's like, yeah, I was looking at the ice beasts that you were throwing at us, and I realized that, if one of those guys had hit Doppler, he might be dead. And I'm like, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and they really were sort of bouncing off of you. He's like, yeah, I know. Yeah, we got to do something. I was like, yeah. And so we spent some time working on it. We eventually got to a point where he kept sort of downscaling him a bit. It's basically forcing more like required limitations out of that like limitations on his powers that so that he couldn't just fully abuse his variable power pool that he had. At any rate, so
Yeah,
here's the
well,
thing.
that happens in all sorts of games too.
Absolutely.
Like I've made Shadowrun characters are largely invulnerable, largely by accident.
Oh yeah.
Um, it's harder to do in Cyberpunk, but you can do it. And yeah, it's you can do it in a lot of different systems. It's more egregious in superhero systems.
Yeah, well, as I said, I think part of it is it happens in any point-based system.
Mm.
It's very easy to find efficiencies. Find the most efficient way to build things, and over focus on that when you're building your character. I mean, you basically go, oh, this is really cool, and I can make it more efficient this way. And oh wow, if I do this, it becomes even more powerful. And you're not intending to break the game. But then you realize that, aha, now I use my crazy power, and what does it actually do? Oh my god, what have I done?
Yeah, and a lot of this it comes from few form games like someone said in chat, it happens in Mage,
Oh yeah,
the White Wolf
absolutely.
game, because Mage is the I think I'll bend reality to my will
Yeah, oh
game.
yeah. But yeah, you can accidentally, build the wave motion gun. I mean,
Yeah,
I mean, I've referred to the clip in Star Blazers before, when the crew of the Yamato fires the wave motion gun for the first time. And the whole point is that basically they were given the technology for the wave motion engine, and they figured, well, it produces a crap ton of energy. We can harness that energy and build a weapon out of it for a last-ditch weapon. And so they use it, and it is vastly more powerful than they had any concept of being. By their calculations, they should have blown up a little base, and they blew up the entire continent it was on. And they're like, okay, this is impressive, but
we should really
yeah.
get a sound clip for that and play it.
Oh, it's the sound because it really is. I can dig it up, but oh my god, the sound effect of the wave motion gun really is the sound of far too much energy being used all at once,
Yes.
and physics complaining. All right,
Why are you doing that to me? Shut up, physics. Just do what we say. Uh, but back to the subject at hand. Superheroic difficulties, as is the title.
yes.
But
Um.
I'm sorry, I had nothing.
Oh, you
I'm
did.
kind of
Sorry.
scatterbrained this evening. I apologize.
It's all right. But yeah. So back to the topic. So there's that problem right there. Is that So, but back to my point about challenging heroes is that the important bit is that the way most superhero games that I've run work is that the way you build villains is exactly the same way you build heroes.
Well, yeah, why wouldn't you? I mean, you've got mooks and stuff. They're mooks, but like
Right.
for a
But
set piece villain, you build him like you would a hero.
right.
You might even throw some extra points on there if he's supposed to be particularly scary.
Oh, absolutely. That I've complained before about in third edition about when you build monsters in third edition, you have to build them the same way you build players, and that makes it very time consuming for third edition. But the
Mm,
big difference is that when you're doing that in like D&D, the monsters you're building that you want to build in that way are really supposed to be kind of disposable. So you're spending a lot of time building a monster that you're not really planning on reusing. Whereas when you build a supervillain, he's got to show up more than once.
mm.
Unless you're sort of building a one-off supervillain, but in that case, you can basically take an existing one and just like change the special
Yeah.
effects and boom, done.
Well, I'll say that I've had recurring villains that were not necessarily human in games I've run that were third ed D&D.
Absolutely, yeah, but
And yeah, there's nothing wrong with building your dragon exactly like you would a player character, except you run into problems like what bonus stats they get and whatnot. But yeah, and have him be a recurring villain. I mean, then that's awesome.
I think I've got a sound effect for the wave motion gun here. Hang on.
Awesome. But yeah, as far as challenging superheroes, combat, as I said earlier, it hit them with the local superhuman enforcement agency.
Eric, sorry, you were sort of being played over by the sound effect.
I did not hear the sound effect at all.
I didn't.
Oh, shit. That's because I have everything muted.
Yeah. Here, I'll link it to you. I'm going to play it again here. I'll play the sound effect again, and Eric, you can go back to what you were saying before, but I'm going to play it one more time so we don't have the chatter. This is the sound effect of the wave motion gun firing, and yeah. So yes, I wanted to share that with you all because,
Because it's awesome.
yeah, it's one of the most iconic sound effects from anime, in my personal opinion.
It really does sort of give the impression of way too much electricity being pumped through a way too small a hole.
At any rate, so you were saying, Eric, before I played the sound effect and made you completely inaudible.
Well, as I was being destroyed in my puny Gamelon cruiser, I was basically saying, like, when it comes to challenging superheroes, like, seriously, just throw the local meta-human enforcement agency at them and just drown them in red tape. It's a great way to nullify their powers and make them realize that, yes, you live in the real world and there are consequences to just punching the hell out of someone in a china shop.
Absolutely. So there is that. There's also the fact that if they're actually heroes, um, they're going to be worried about the effects on civilians.
Which is why you should never let me play a supervillain on a tight leash in your superhero game.
Um, I, uh, there's a reason I'm glad you decided not to, Eric. Um, I'm very glad you decided not to do that because
I did it once before. I'm not going to repeat that unless I'm looking particularly forward to breaking you.
oh no, it won't break me, Eric.
No, it won't.
No, it'll just make your life a living nightmare. Eric, you know how I handle things like that.
Oh, I know how you handle things.
So,
Congratulations, Eric. You just had an elephant dropped on you. I eat elephants for breakfast. This one explodes.
that's not how I'd handle it. Oh, yes. So you're the supervillain on a
I have
tight leash, and
something.
you just endangered a bunch of civilians. Guess how tight the leash is getting now?
Yeah, it was largely why I built the leash into the character.
Yes.
It was that, and made sure other players had the leash so that they could.
Hmm.
That was part of the party dynamic I was going for.
Yeah, and that's why that character was a fascinating concept. Is
Yes.
because the other party members had the leash, and if they're actually heroic, that makes it actually really interesting.
Yeah, it was actually a pretty interesting character dynamic, and they rarely left me alone after that one incident in the secret facility.
Yeah. Now, so one of the other things I've heard people so that's sort of it's tricky again. Balancing a superhero game is tricky. Do not get me wrong. This is because it's such an open-ended medium,
Mm,
um, and getting things to feel right, uh, like any other game where you're running a game in a particular genre, involves studying the genre. So that means reading comic books. Now, mind you,
yeah,
there
reading comic books, watching superhero cartoons, movies,
yeah,
that kind of deal.
I admit that I haven't really read a lot of modern comic books because I sort of fell out with the I didn't I have not liked a lot of the more modern stuff. Um, but I've really loved the modern animated shows for the most part, and
Yes,
several of
those
the
are
more
all.
recent superhero movies have been actually quite good. I mean, there have been some pretty bad ones in there too, and there's some that some people like that I don't. Um, I was not impressed by the Thor movie, other than the spectacular visuals.
Yes,
Oh
they
my
managed to
God, the
make.
visuals!
They took Jack Kirby's stuff and made it look cool.
Well, Jack Kirby
I
looked.
didn't think that was possible
Oh,
outside of animation.
right. Okay. Yeah, I was about to say. Well, but Jack Kirby stuff looked fucking awesome on the page. Oh. Okay. Live, you mean? Yes.
Yeah, live action, making Jack Kirby's stuff not look stupid live action,
Yeah.
I thought was an impossible task,
And they did
and
it.
they managed to
They
do
they
it.
did. Oh my God, Asgard looked amazing.
Yes, the destroyer, the guy with the friggin' beam
Oh
cannons.
my God, it was so well done.
It was so incredibly well done.
It's really unfortunate that movie didn't have a middle.
I've heard that complaint a lot, and after having reviewed, re-seen it, I kind of agree with that complaint, that criticism. On the whole, though, I really enjoyed the movie,
I wasn't a big fan of it. It's not
and
terrible, but it's.
I'm also biased because, yeah.
Oh, I like. I have problems with Marvel Thor to begin with.
I mean, like the fact that it has nothing to do with actual Thor.
Almost nothing, but his name's Thor. He's got parts of the equipment correct.
Well, yeah, he's got one piece of the equipment correct.
He does.
The hammer. That's about it.
It's not correct, Eric.
It's kind of
It's
correct.
kind of correct. Yeah.
It's more correct than the gauntlets or the belt, which are
Oh,
non-existent.
yeah. I know. Do you remember why the gauntlets exist, Eric?
So he can carry the hammer.
Yeah. Well, so he can catch the hammer
Yeah.
because when it comes back, it's really hot, and the handle is too short.
Hmm.
Take a look at Thor's hammer sometime, folks. Also, Thor is not blonde
No, he's actually a redhead.
with a beard,
Hmm.
and he's stupid.
He's dumb as a
Really,
stump.
really dumb.
Dumb as a stump.
I
I
mean,
mean, you love him to death because he's Thor, but man, you just don't put a math problem in front of him.
there's a reason that my friends and a lot of my friends joke about Loki being Thor's external brain.
It's true. It's very much true.
Yeah, until Loki changes, basically turns on the Norse gods. He's basically the one who points Thor in the correct direction. It's like Thor, go there, smash thing. Okay, crush. So there's that. The next bit that I've heard complaints about for superhero games is people wanting to play established heroes too much, like actual comic book heroes.
I've
And
never encountered
I
this.
haven't either. I mean, I've had people want to do sort of homages to some stuff, but they're usually homages to minor characters.
Um, I remember in one game someone decided they wanted to play the Hulk, but instead of getting stronger the more angry he got, he traded intelligence for super strength. Like he basically, like when he was at like full tilt, he was basically Lemmy from A Vice of Men.
Wow.
Yeah, it was actually a really cool character
That's
concept.
actually kind of interesting.
Yeah,
So, but yeah, I mean, I can sort of understand that, but I mean, part of it is, I mean, I've never run a game where it was set in an official universe. I've always run them. Well, I've used the official Champions universe for the published Champions RPG. No, before this is before the MMO came out, and no one ever wanted to play the official characters in there because most of them were kind of lame.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
the original Defender was sort of a quasi okay battlesuit guy with way too low defenses for what he was designed to handle.
No, he's
Um,
wearing a friggin' white body stocking.
the,
That's
orig-
not
the
powered
original the
armor.
original Defender didn't.
Okay.
I'm talking back in like third and fourth edition. Um,
Thousands of years ago when dinosaurs roamed the
right.
earth. Gotcha.
So the team was Defender. Uh,
Witchcraft?
she might. I think she was there. I can't remember her name. No, her name was Solitaire at that point.
Okay.
Um, I can't remember the name of the original team. All of them. Yeah, actually, I can remember most of them. There was Obsidian, who was, Iron, whatever the Iron guy's name is.
Right.
Their equivalent, Alien Brick, basically. Um, except he's made out of rock instead of metal. He's also a prince. He's actually kind of cool. I liked him. They had Jaguar, who was a detective who could turn into a were-jaguar. He was sort of quasi okay. Uh, Sapphire, there was someone else. There was a character who was similar to Sapphire whose name escapes me right now. That might have been I forget.
I
And
think you and I are the only people that actually know who these people are. That's because I play the MMO and you know champions
but I'm going
inside
through.
and out.
But the important character that is possibly the most mocked character of the original Champions, but I still love him to death, is Seeker, who was and sorry for the side tangent on this, but I want to talk about Seeker because he's awesome, despite being awful. He is basically almost every 80s. He's a lot of different 80s tropes slash cliches shoved into one character, because he is an Australian ninja.
Okay, that's awesome.
He's wonderful. I mean, he's basically he's from Australia. His basically there was a guy who was part of the Japanese military who was a ninja who basically escaped to Australia and after the war, and basically Seeker's family took him in, and he decided to train the young kid in ninjutsu. And the guy was not was a good guy ninja, not an evil ninja, because it's a comic book and they're both types.
You're right. There are always both
Remember,
types.
comic book ninjas. And
Interesting.
Seeker. So Seeker is he's a bit of a joke because he's very silly in some ways, and he's not the most
He's
effective.
an Australian ninja. That's pretty automatically silly.
Oh, absolutely. I have to see if I can find a picture of the. Here we go. There we go.
He
Beautiful.
absolutely needed a mohawk. Did he have a mohawk?
No, he didn't. He had. Well, I will show you a picture.
Did he have a Crocodile Dundee hat worn over a ninja gi mask
No,
thing?
no, 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 no. I'm going to link you a picture of the fourth edition Champions cover, which has Seeker on it, and I will tell you the story of this picture, which is epic. There we go. So the people in the chat can see it here. That there is Doctor Destroyer fighting against Seeker, as there's member of the Champions lying there in wreckage behind them.
Wow, he's the karate kung fu Australian kid.
Isn't he?
You know what he reminds me of? You remember that old cartoon from the old Rambo's cartoon from the 80s?
Vaguely.
He reminds me of a character from that.
So yeah, that's Seeker right there, the guy in the white pants with the black slippers and the bandolier with throwing stars and the katana. And on the right there is Doctor Destroyer, who's one of the most powerful supervillains ever in the Champions universe. Um, Now, the first question when I showed this cover to a friend of mine before they hadn't met this is, okay, oh, interesting. So, that's a really special sword, right? No,
No.
that's just a katana. That guy's doomed, isn't he? Yeah, yeah, he is. The running joke is that if for the fourth edition Champions books was that if the cover features Seeker having his ass kicked, it's probably a good book, and if he's actually doing well, it's probably not one of their better books. And it actually holds up surprisingly well. Seeker's not actually getting his ass kicked yet on this cover, but he's
He's going to be.
note that Dr. Shore was actually holding the wall up in his hand there.
One-handed.
Yeah. So I love Seeker to death. And but he was written out because people thought he was too silly, and he was replaced by Nightwing. Who's Batman with a bird hat thing, sort of like for Battle of the Planets.
Kind of like Nightwing, the actual DC character.
You've seen Nightwing, right? The Champions character.
Oh, that guy. Yeah. Okay, he's got like the hood and like
He's got the hood with the bird beak coming down to the front.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
like he was rejected from Battle of the Planets.
Right, right. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, because that guy's far less silly than Seeker. I'm a little bitter if you haven't noticed. But at any rate, one of the things I love about super RPGs is you could play someone like Seeker and play him and not feel like you're wrong. You know, he is an appropriate character. He fits in.
Well, I wouldn't say he fits in anywhere. He's
Well,
an
no.
Australian ninja.
Well, no, but I mean, in a superhero, but he's not out of place in most superhero games. I mean, yeah, he'll be a silly character in a lot of them, and he is. But just because he's silly doesn't make him, bad.
No, I mean, that's part of the joy of superhero games. You can come up with something absolutely ridiculous and silly and still have it work.
Yeah, I mean, Battle Bear.
Yeah,
It's
Battle
one of
Bear,
my
yes.
absolute favorite superheroes I've ever had in any of my games. And on the face of it, a bear in a battle suit is silly. He's
It's
really,
ridiculous.
really silly.
But silly in an awesome way.
Exactly.
I wish I had come up with Battle Bear. That's so great.
Battle Bear likes honey. But that's the thing. I mean, and again, you see, what we're talking about with like Battle Bear and Seeker, they are more than their collection of powers.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's what makes you love them. And that's what makes you love comic book characters in general.
I mean, I suppose everyone eventually tries playing the Wolverine homage. It's like, grr, I'm a half-feral Gurry guy with a heart of gold, and I've also got razor claws in my hands. Grr.
I've never actually had that in any of my actual games.
Neither have I. I just assumed everyone played one. I always considered playing one. Let me put it that way. 'Cause
Yeah,
on
sure.
the surface, it seems like it would be fun.
The one character I see most people sort of are most likely. Actually, I've seen people do. I mean, you'll occasionally see homages to characters in games I've run or been involved in. There was a game that my friend Jesse ran briefly because almost none of Jesse's games last very long because Jesse doesn't actually enjoy game mastering. He loves coming up with campaign ideas, but he doesn't actually enjoy the process of running a game. He's found out, so he basically doesn't do it anymore.
Mm.
But in this game, it was sort of a high-powered superhero game, and we had not one but two people playing very different Superman homages. They were basically playing Superman, different takes on Superman. One more emphasized the speedster aspects a bit more than the other, and the other one emphasized the brick aspects more, which I thought was actually kind of cool.
Actually, what would be kind of cool is to do an all not Superman team. You could have like Captain Marvel and Gladiator and Invincible and
And Samaritan from Astro City.
yep, definitely the Samaritan. Actually, I guess Invincible's more of a Superboy.
Yeah.
So Omni-Man from the same comics.
Or and you can go through a whole bunch of different ones. There's the High, who was briefly in Stormwatch.
Yep.
He was in the Arc Change or Die. He dies at the end of it, unfortunately.
Oh, from the Authority. What's his name? The sort of sun-powered guy who was
Oh,
totally
yeah, Apollo.
Superman. Apollo, yes, totally gay
Apollo's awesome.
Superman.
Oh
Um,
God, Supreme.
oh yeah,
How can
yeah,
we forget Supreme?
yeah. So we just do a team of that and have them fight like Thanos and Darkseid. Two great taste great together because they're both Jack Kirby going insane.
Yeah. But at any rate, I mean, but so I've seen homages like that, but it was still a different character. Um, I played briefly when I was in high school. The first time I ever played Champions, uh, I was playing in a Champions game that was set in the Marvel universe.
Mm.
None of us actually wanted. None of us, no one in the group wanted to play a Marvel character. We wanted to play characters and interact with the Marvel characters because that's far more interesting. We want to play our own heroes who are interacting with Marvel characters.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing. Like, I'm all down with like having Superman or Spider-Man or whoever show up and hang out with your characters for a little while because that's cool. That's actually kind of nerdtastic.
Yep.
But I'm not so down with wanting to be Superman or Spider-Man or Wonder Woman or Hellboy. Although I did think about making Hecklad once.
But yeah, like honestly, most of the time I've seen homages, like characters who are basically trying to be an official character, is in superhero MMOs,
Yes.
where you'll see it all. But again, you're not really for a lot of that. You're not really playing the character. You just want to say, I want to, I want to beat guys up and be like Superman. Okay, sure. Like, I mean, honestly, I can sort of understand. I can almost understand wanting to be the Tick
Because it would be awesome.
and but like playing the Tick in like a more serious superhero game would be kind of fun for a while.
Yeah.
Playing the Tick off of like real, more normal superheroes, and normal is a very, very, very loose term.
Playing the Tick off of the Punisher would be comedy gold.
Oh, the Punisher would hate the Tick.
I know, that's why it would be so funny. Could you just imagine the Tick not realizing the Punisher hates his guts and the Punisher not being able to do anything about it because the Tick is not invulnerable?
Yeah.
That's hilarious. I want to see this done.
They kind of did it in the Tick, actually. There was the Big Shot, remember? Big Shot.
Oh, right. Big Shot. Yes, I remember. That's not as funny as the Tick and the actual
No, it's not.
Punisher from...
But no, like the Tick actually just in Marvel in general, interacting with Marvel heroes would be kind of interesting because someone would handle him pretty well. Like I think Spidey would actually cope with the Tick better than
No,
most people.
Spidey and the Tick would get along great.
I mean,
Yes.
Spidey would be frustrated by the fact that Tick is crazy and stupid,
Yes.
but he'd be able to handle that.
Crazy and stupid all the time, you Spider-Man.
Right.
I mean, how often does the Rhino show up? I mean,
Yeah, and this time he's on his side.
yeah.
But I mean, basically, it's grow on in the chat. Spidey and the Tick. Dear God, that would be awesome. Yeah, it would be.
Yes, it would.
And then he threw a chimney at us.
I would.
God help us if Professor X decides to read Tick's mind. Why am I getting a dial tone?
Oh, could you imagine Cyclops and the Tick? That's also comedy gold.
Actually, Cyclops would be very would actually would be great for the Tick. Because, Cyclops is a good tactician, and and he'd be able to basically if the Tick actually earned the Tick's respect by basically treating him in a reasonable, treat him well, the Tick would actually probably follow his suggestions.
I'm just sort of more envisioning the more maudlin and retarded writings of Cyclops.
Well,
Cyclops is really cool when he's done right. When he's done poorly, he's
awful.
really gets under my skin.
But again, that's almost any hero written right can be well done. I've read comic books where Cable didn't suck.
You lie, sir.
I do not lie. Well, after
Possible.
no, after Liefeld left Marvel, there was a run during X-Force where Cable whoever took over X-Force spent a lot of effort trying to make Cable not suck. They didn't completely succeed, and they basically sat there looking at Cable going, how the fuck do I do anything with his backstory? And because there's a lot of different conflicting
Cable's
stuff.
backstory. So mercurial, it changes from plot to plot.
Yeah, he managed to tie it together in something resembling a backstory for a little while. Then it got undone later, but whatever.
Right.
It involved a lot of time travel.
I remember that from the '90s cartoon show.
Yeah.
Where Cable just sort of they introduced Cable the same way they did in the actual Marvel universe.
Yeah.
Sort of showed up, and everyone already knew him. and the viewers are like, "What the fuck's going on?" Then you realize like all then they do a couple episodes of this time travel involving Cable, and like, oh, he's been mucking around with the time stream.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And notice Cable didn't suck in that cartoon.
It's true. I actually kind of liked Cable in that cartoon. That was actually my first introduction to Cable, and I thought he was awesome. And
Yeah.
then I
Then you
Cable.
read the original. Then you read the Liefeld stuff. You go, oh my god, what the hell? Fuck you, Rob Liefeld. Fuck you. But again, someone managed. There's several Liefeld's awful characters that have been turned into decent characters.
Deadpool wouldn't done well as
Again,
one.
I'm not a big fan of Deadpool,
You
but
don't like Deadpool. I love him to death.
I know. But I will say this: anyone but Liefeld writing it makes him much more palatable.
Yes. Absolutely. Liefeld was briefly writing the Deathstroke comic for the New 52, and the Deathstroke comic wasn't good to begin with. And I love me some Deathstroke. He's one of my favorite antagonists from the DC universe
Yep.
because he's basically evil Captain America.
Yeah, pretty much.
And uh, it wasn't a good comic to start with because I only bought a couple issues because it was very Punisher but extreme.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then Liefeld happened, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Well. All right. So one of the things someone in the chat asked about, which I think sort of ties into all of this, was the subject of running a street level game versus sort of a JLA level game. Um, Honestly, that it takes sort of a different mindset about how to apply characters, and you also have to run at a lower power level. You basically give the players fewer points to build their characters with. Um,
Power level is the easiest way to handle that.
and then and you use fewer actual supervillains. You use guys with weapons.
Yeah.
The tone will be very different because lethality will be more common. I mean, I will say this flat out, and Eric, I'm sure you're expecting this. The game I'm going to be running will be fairly four color.
It's shocking.
It will not be very Iron Agey because I don't do Iron Age well. I mean, that's the thing.
That's cool. I actually look forward to playing in your four color world. I've never done it before. You've got such passion for it. I expect this to be awesome. So
I mean, I admit I've it'll be a more mature four color world than sort of the Silver Age comics I grew up reading, um, because I've been reading Astro City, and
right.
Astro City is largely a love letter to the Silver Age. Um,
Oh, is your city anything like Astro City?
there'll be elements of that, yes.
Is there going to be a Mount Kirby?
Uh,
That sort of like spooky like Eastern European neighborhood.
that's Shadow Hill.
Shadow Hill. That's it. You're gonna have a Shadow Hill there.
Yeah, probably.
Okay, that's where my character lives.
I have to work on the city
Makes
map.
sense.
Yeah, it does. But at any rate, so yeah, the difference between doing a street level game versus a JLA style game is largely tone, and scope and scale.
Yes.
Street level game, you're going to be focusing on more normal crime for the most part. Rio Planeswalker, Mount Kirby, referring to Jack Kirby, the godfather of superhero artists, the king, the greatest,
Yes.
he who has inspired everything. If you don't know who Jack Kirby is, I know you know that, Ryu, but I'm just saying this for everybody. If you don't know who Jack Kirby is, think of that classic superhero pose where the superhero is sort of standing there dynamically with one hand stretched out towards the viewer and sort of one back in the dynamic action pose. And there's a lot of there's I can't foreshadowing. I think is the term. You're the artist, Eric.
Force perspective.
Force perspective. That's it. Thank you. Couldn't remember the actual term. Kirby basically invented that in comic books.
Yes.
Before Kirby, the art style was much less dynamic and much flatter. Foreshortening, that's what I was thinking of. Yes.
Yes.
Thank you for that, D-Man. Not being an artist, I don't remember the actual terms.
I assumed you were working with force perspective, but yeah, foreshadowing works also.
Foreshortening, but yeah.
Foreshortening, yeah, that word. I I went to art school. I know what I'm talking about.
At any rate, so you got that right there. That's Kirby, and like after that, the art style in comic books changed completely for the better, mostly for the better.
Yes.
Um, uh, you know, some things have gotten a bit, weird, and some artists aren't very good. Um, looking again at you, Rob Liefeld,
One
and
poor guy to be so reviled and to know it, yet still get consistent work.
well, some people like. There are people who do like his stuff. I mean,
That's yeah. There must be. He gets consistent work,
that's a thing. And God,
and I've heard he's actually a really nice guy in person. I've never actually met him, but I've heard he's a really nice guy.
yeah, I basically, I wouldn't surprise me. He's a fairly nice guy with a bit of a temper because I've seen how he goes off the cuff on people online. Um, but he's there. There. I mean, but at any rate, I don't want to get into a debate about art styles and comic books right now because I want to say that for another podcast actually, where we can get Hannah on because
Yes, actually,
she's more of a comic book nerd than either Eric or I.
she's got powers.
She does.
She makes her living in a comic book shop behind the counter, reading comic books all day.
And she reads more than either Eric or I do.
Yes.
Um,
In fact,
and
for the longest time, most of the comics I read, she just fed me.
yeah. At any rate, so yeah, that's I think that covers most of what I want to sort of cover on that. I mean, it's basically for me, honestly, my take on running the superhero games, the challenges of running it are not that different from the challenges of running any RPG. You basically have to keep in mind of roughly how powerful your players' characters are, and come up with things that you think will effectively challenge them when you need to challenge them physically. And then you have to remember that they are more than a collection of their abilities. They are characters,
Yeah.
and they've got their own motivations, their own wants, and what they care about or what they stand for. That's actually more important to superheroes game, is remembering what the character actually stands for and what they consider important and building adventures around that, not like taking advantage of it per se.
And please, please, don't just stuff a character's girlfriend in the fridge. It's a
Oh,
cliche now.
well, there's a reason for that. There's a reason. It's a cliche, and it's a bad cliche. Um, and yeah, that's the other thing I do want to touch on. God, one of the things I love about running superhero games is that I've been able to have strong female characters that aren't just cliches
Mm.
and don't I don't have to worry about the whole. Uh, it's not just the tits and ass thing. It's the more that they're allowed to be strong and not have to There's a oh God, there was an article
They're not just receptacles for murder and rape.
that's that's the thing. There was a comic book artist whose name escapes me right now. Someone tweeted a link to their Tumblr where they were their blog, where they were talking about how they gotten a bunch of emails about some of their characters. That this email from a couple people, and this one guy in particular, who asked, and I'm not kidding you, this is actually what the question was: is when are these characters going to be raped?
Yeah.
Not if, when. And the artist's response, the comic book creator's response was, never. I'm not going to do that to these characters. And the guy went off on how that's unrealistic and terrible and such. And I'm sitting going, you're going, wait, what?
Not every woman is out there to get raped. That's a horrible, horrible thing, person, and you should hang your head in shame before you shove it into a garbage disposal. That is also turned on.
But I'm just saying that I just just the way it's phrased. When are they? It's like when? What?
And to be fair, this is an actual kind of a problem, particularly in the late 80s and 90s,
Yeah.
where if there was a female character, she was going to get raped, and it was
Or at least be attempted
not
or
good.
something.
It was a bad, bad time.
Yeah. I mean, and it happened. That was especially true during among the bad Iron Age comics.
Yes, absolutely. There's a reason why the good Iron Age stuff I love to death. It's some of my favorite stuff. But the bad shit is absolutely vile.
Hmm. So at any rate, that's the thing you have to remember is that you can make things difficult for players, not just via them, but by things they care about, civilians, The police, if they form a good relationship with the police, or if they don't, the police can cause them problems, etc. I mean, challenges for superheroes don't have to be direct physical challenges. Is what I'm saying, and that's actually really important. Um,
Yes.
we've been rambling a bunch, and it's sort of not an easy topic to. As I said, a large part of it is it's sort of typical RPG stuff. Is that the challenges of playing and running a superhero game aren't as different from a normal RPG as you think. Uh, Especially if you're used to running the sort of style of system that most superhero games are based on, which is a point-based system with a lot of flexibility.
Yeah, a point-based freeform system. That's probably the biggest challenge.
That's
Is you're
actually the
moving
biggest
from
challenge. Yeah, I agree.
a it is not superheroes versus other genres. It's moving from a class-based system to a freeform point-based system.
Yeah, that's actually going to be your biggest challenge. I agree with you, Eric, completely. So I think we're going to move on to a couple of questions here.
Okay.
The first one is from Darth Elmo, which
Ooh, spooky.
yeah, this could take a while to answer. So if we don't get to anything else, I apologize. But I wanted to answer this because it's actually I wanted to try to answer this. It's hard. This is going to be easy. His question was: is how can you tell if an RPG, if you can, how you can tell if an RPG is objectively good? Is it all simply all subjective, or are there actual tools to be able to tell if it's good or not just by sort of reading through it? Also, if it is just subjective, is there a way you can tell if you're going to like a new system ahead of time without buying it?
Um. Wow. This is a rough one.
It's a tough question. I wanted to touch on it, though, because I think it's actually sort of important. Uh, okay, here's the first thing. It depends on what you want out. There's a significant chunk of subjectiveness to this because different players want different things out of different games. I've touched on this before.
Right.
Uh, And so, if you're someone who if you don't care about mechanics much, then it's almost gonna be impossible. You're only be able to, the way you'll be able to tell is if you like the setting, or if you like how it. That's gonna be your first clue is whether it's a setting you like. If it's not a, if it's a game that has a setting, and you don't like the setting, odds are you're not gonna like the game. But talking from a mechanical standpoint, because that's really the only thing. I mean,
That
that's
that's
where
the only yeah. That's
that's
the
the only
only
place you're going to be able
non.
to find anything objective.
Yeah.
It depends on how much you care about the mechanics being balanced or not, pretty much, on how much you care about solid mechanics and how much you're willing to house rule. Basically, you're gonna have to read through the rules. I mean, you can reference some reviews of the games. RPG.net has a lot of them. Uh, with mixed levels of effectiveness. They tend to break it down to two types of reviews: capsule reviews, which is just based on reading through the rules and not actually having played it, and then reviews based on having actually played the game. Um, and you'll have to take everything you read with a grain of salt because your opinions of what matters in RPG will probably differ from what the reviewers' opinions are.
Well, this is true with reading anything from any critic.
Absolutely. But that's the thing is you sort of you'll have to sort of start figuring out. Part of it is you figure if you think the mechanics are going to be solid is understanding probability and statistics will help you a lot. If you don't really have a good foundation on probability and statistics, it's much harder to read through a rule set and extrapolate whether you think that it'll work mechanically. Um,
I'm honestly not good at that at extrapolating that. I've got a good instinct for it. I usually feel my way around that kind of stuff,
right,
but I couldn't put it into words,
right,
so I
exactly,
don't bother.
right. And additionally, I mean, a lot of experience with a lot of different systems will give you a better eye for this sort of thing.
Yes, and that's exactly how I basically drawing entirely from past experience.
Right. Whereas I have both that and having been an economics major in college, I do understand statistics and
Yeah.
probability because you have to study. Those are required subjects as an econ major. So basically, if you're not going to go off the reviews, and I understand that completely because reviews aren't going to always tie into what your tastes are. Uh, you're going to have to read through it, and odds are that means you're either going to have to borrow a copy from like the library, or if you have a fairly local game store where they let you browse significantly, you can thumb through the rules and get a feel for it that way. But odds are you'll have to pick up the rule book and read through it. Um,
I'm actually going to use a real life and recent example.
okay.
Um, I recently picked up the new Iron Kingdoms RPG. Did this for a few reasons. One, I've got a lot of faith in Privateer Press. They have yet to fail me.
Mm-hmm.
These are the publishers of said game. They produce War Machine and both War Machine and Hordes, which are excellent tabletop war games. Their collectible game is actually a lot of fun. Monster Apocalypse, but I just don't do collectible games. And the systems that they build on are always solid. So I had that going. It's also the fact that I am absolutely in love with the setting. It's a very sort of weird steampunk-ish kind of world, and I really like that. And three, I actually had the opportunity to flip through the rules before I purchased it, and came to the conclusion that it plays a lot like the tabletop war game, which is usually a bad sign looking at you, first edition Mech Warrior. Um, but they managed to complicate it where it needed to be complicated and simplify it where it needed to be simplified. And basically, I figured that out by flipping through the rules and reading over a few things while and being really familiar with the tabletop board game rules. And I've since had it for a few weeks now, and I haven't had a chance to play it. That'll be the real test, but so far it seems like a pretty solid system.
Cool. I actually look forward to your running a game in it.
Yes, this will be an experience.
Hey, I've actually had you GM an entire session before.
You did? When did
Yes,
that happen?
the one session of the Shadowrun game,
Oh yeah, yeah,
and I
yeah.
enjoyed it for the most part, despite the fact that I'm not a big Shadowrun fan.
Yes, there was that one session of Shadowrun. Um, Unfortunately, I was trying to run a very gritty street level game, but there's no power level settings in Shadowrun,
Yeah.
and Chris accidentally optimized his character, and my street level thugs got squished.
Yeah, Chris accidentally optimized. Chris and Leland both heavily optimized their characters.
Because they are wont to do that.
Yeah, and that's fine. My character was actually sort of optimized, but not nearly to the same level.
Right.
I was as accurate as Chris was,
Yes.
but I was using a vibro knife, and wasn't as teched up because the character concept wasn't going to be heavily cybernetic.
Right. You had a bunch of other stuff.
Yes. Yes,
Which
I was a skill
would
monkey
have
again.
come up
Which
a lot more in a actual game,
yep,
but as a one-off session, they didn't really come up that much. Like
yep,
the gobs of police contacts you had.
uh huh.
But dead air.
Yes. Sorry,
I
I had a chip in my
cracked
mouth.
up my own laser pointer. I was playing with the cat.
At any rate, so yeah, I wish I could be more. We could give you more sort of a more solid answer to that, Darth Elmo. Um, and he sort of suggests it's sort of a show topic, but the problem is that it's nothing. I don't think we could have spun it into a full show because there
Yeah.
is no definitive answer. Is basically the problem.
And there's experience will help. Experience with the system in question will help.
Right.
A lot of our systems problems won't come out until you actually have encounter actual play, and which is largely how I learned to revile the Palladium system as much as I do.
Right.
The complete lack of balance across classes is not immediately obvious. Well, it is, but it's not as it's as it's not as obvious how egregious it is.
So, so yeah, the other thing I want to touch on is that people have probably heard me mention in various places that there are systems I've read where I've actually said, okay, the mechanics of this game are bad, and they are objectively bad, and that's because, as I said, I actually do know how probability and statistics work, so I can look at something from a mathematical standpoint and go, okay, that is actually a bad mechanic, and I can explain mathematically why it is. Um,
I usually go more by balance, and that requires a more in-depth read.
Well, again, but that's the thing is that balance is a separate issue. There are
Yes,
games where the actual core mechanics are flawed.
yes.
Um,
Looking at you, Palladium.
uh, Not quite as bad as it could be. Again, it's basically second edition D&D, and the core actual combat mechanics of second edition D&D is flawed, but not disastrously so.
Mm,
It's roll d20. It's d20 versus a DC. I mean that difficulty class.
yeah,
It's just that they set their benchmarks at the wrong points, in my opinion. And so the odds
the
of you hitting.
gobs of extra attacks you can get. Plus, it was overly complicated for what it was.
Well, that was the problem with Palladium. Is they said, well, second edition wasn't complex enough, so we're going to add a whole bunch of random extra stuff, that crazy ways you could get extra things, and blah 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 blah.
Yeah,
And
like 10,000 extra attacks per round, and a dodge mechanic, but no in combat movement system, which was really weird. Um,
again, because it's second edition D&D, and second edition D&D doesn't really have one, but second edition D&D is a much simpler system, therefore it handles the fact that it doesn't have that sort of thing better.
yeah, but these are things that Palladium added on, but didn't address some of the other issues with the system.
Right. All right, so I want to go to, but from there, I think that sort of covers that question for the most part. If it doesn't, Darth Elmo, email us and we'll see if we can help you out a bit more later. All right, one more question from email here. Let me check to see if this is from Richard G. Scales. Well, okay, I can answer this question quickly. This won't be much of a serious question here, but his question is, this is mostly for Peter, given your self-proclaimed love of the GURPS system. I haven't actually looked into the GURPS system very much, but it sounds very flexible, so I might sometime soon. It is. My question
Yeah,
is, have you had any experience with a GURPS supplement called Humanics? It's based in the Humanics Commonwealth Universe from the author Alan Dean Foster, his favorite author. Not sure how if you know about Foster or not, but given your extensive knowledge of GURPS, I thought you might know whether or not it's a good supplement. Okay, I have not read any of the Humanics books, so can't
neither have
help you
I
there.
actually.
I've heard of
It's
Alan Dean
weird.
Foster.
We're both usually pretty well read.
Yeah, I've not read a lot of Alan Dean Foster stuff, so I really
I honestly can't think of anything of his I've read. I've heard of him, but
I've
I
heard of
haven't
the
actually
Humanics
read it.
Commonwealth. I mean, I've heard of it. I've
Yeah.
just never read it. So I don't know anything about the supplement. Okay, here's the thing. About 70% of the time when GURPS releases a source book based on a work of fiction, they do a very good job of adapting it, especially when it's sci-fi. Um, that said, there is that other 30% of the time where it doesn't work as well as you'd like it to, because GURPS, while it is a universal system and handles most things very well, it doesn't handle everything perfectly. And sometimes it handles things poorly. Looking at you, GURPS Vampire the Masquerade.
I can't believe that was a thing.
Oof, oof.
I can believe it was a thing, but
Actually, looking at you, GURPS Vampire the Masquerade, GURPS Werewolf the Apocalypse, and GURPS Mage the Ascension. They did all three of them,
GURPS
and
World
none of them
Darkness.
worked. Unlike GURPS
GURPS World
Cyberpunk, which worked
Darkness.
brilliantly.
Distressingly so.
Well, again, that really wasn't it wasn't GURPS Cyberpunk 2020. That was GURPS doing their own Cyberpunk book.
Yeah.
So, and look, it's sort of gritty sci-fi. Huh. What's GURPS really, really good at?
Well,
Gritty sci-fi. Oh!
but yeah, basically what it boils down to is yeah, buy the supplement, check it if it's any good.
Yeah,
Um,
but for the most part, most of their setting books that are based on established works of fiction, they do a lot of research on them, and they put a lot of effort into making it as true to the work as they can. So if you really like the Humanics Commonwealth stuff, there's a good chance it'll be well done. Some examples that I can think of off the top of my head, GURPS Lensman is fucking brilliant. Um,
oh, I forgot they did Lensman.
it's really well done. GURPS Uplift is amazing.
Yes.
And part of that is because David Brin helped out on it. David Brin heard they were doing it and said, ooh, can I help? And they were like, yeah.
Yes.
Cool. Oh, there's some, oh, you're asking about this sort of thing that I mentioned somewhere and had her filled in? Well, okay, I'll fill it in for you guys. Here. Awesome. So there's stuff in GURPS Uplift which expands on the Uplift universe and is actually canon because it was written by David Brin.
Yes.
And stuff like that happened a lot, especially during the 80s and 90s when GURPS was at its peak. Um, so their supplements like that are generally very good. Though there, as I said, there's probably about 30% of them that aren't as well done. So if you pick up the GURPS base set and want to pick up the Humanities Commonwealth book because you really like that and you want to run a game in it, it's probably worth the risk.
Yeah. Um,
Um,
Also, you're in love with the world, and if nothing else, GURPS is probably going to expand on it in various ways.
yep.
Whether or not it's canon is debatable,
Yeah,
but
it'll vary by supplement, but
it'll vary by supplement. But it'll expand and give you it'll expand the world for you, and that's almost worth picking it up.
and
I have
even
done this.
and honestly, even if the mechanics that if they have come up with mechanics to represent something in that's not covered by the GURPS base rules, you can probably ignore that. And the other great thing about these books is even if you ignore the GURPS specific stuff, they are great reference material
Yes.
because you can use it for almost any like I there are several of them I've used for basically just like the world details because they've consolidated like the background stuff into one book. So I can go, okay, that, and I can adapt that to any other system I want to without using the official rules in there. So GURPS World books are generally very, very well done. And I can't, even if you don't like the system, the amount of love and work they put into their world books um, is impressive. And there's,
GURPS Traveler is really good.
oh yeah, it's
Um,
fantastic.
yeah.
Actually, honestly, even their genre books, if you like GURPS Space, GURPS Fantasy, and
GURPS Mecha.
GURPS
GURPS
Mecha,
Mecha was pretty awesome.
just reading through them is actually really fascinating because they do a lot of research and give you a lot of source material that you can go reference. Like GURPS Fantasy, I read through it and they have a bibliography in it, and you basically there were several fantasy books I'd not read that I said, "Ooh, I'll check that out," and read them and thought, "Wow, these are actually really good." That's how I discovered through GURPS Fantasy. It's how I discovered Andre Norton's Witch World books, which are really good.
Mhm. Oh,
Um,
that reminds me. You need to read the Assassin's Creed fan fiction that Roach lent me.
okay.
Um, I can't remember the names of them. So they're all plays on the word shadow,
Mhm.
and the cover totally looks like Assassin's Creed fan fiction. You should ignore the cover.
Uh, let's see. GURPS Sci-Fi. The GURPS Sci-Fi book is what got me to actually read Lensman in the first place.
Mm.
And Doc E. Smith's other work, Scholar's of Space, and crap, I can't remember the other book I read of his. Uh,
Lensman, also called Green Lantern Prototype.
yeah, yes, the Lensman books are heavy influences for the later Green Lantern stuff. Let me think, what else? But yeah, I discovered a lot of fiction through those books because their bibliography section is extensive.
And usually good.
And very well researched. Zastiver in the chat asked, "Does GURPS have a good Star Wars setting?" No. Uh,
GURPS doesn't do Star Wars well.
GURPS will not do Star Wars well. It's too gritty and realistic.
Star Wars is. I'm still waiting for the Feng Shui Star Wars.
That honestly that Feng Shui is the one system I think that will handle Star Wars and get them to feel right. That's the problem I've had with virtually every Star Wars
Actually, you
game.
know what? If you do a really like gritty underworld type of Star Wars, like dealing mostly with like Jabba and the other underworld stuff, GURPS might work pretty well.
Yeah, I guess you could do
Just
that.
yeah, just stay away from some of the stay away from Jedi. Don't let Jedi in the
No,
game.
dear God, no. No, 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 no. Yeah, GURPS doesn't handle psionics well. It's one of the things that it does. Their psionics rules have never been good. Oops, sorry.
And even if you decided to instead say Jedi are magic, it's still not very good.
Their magic system's also not very good.
Like, don't let Jedi in the game if you're going to run GURPS.
Yeah,
Star
basically, yeah, GURPS doesn't do high cinematic stuff particularly well. Hero System does it better, but even then, I wouldn't use Hero System for Star Wars. I mean, you could do it.
It feels almost too complicated for Star Wars.
It is.
Star Wars has this sort of purity to it that I don't mean that like fluffy bunnies and unicorns kind of way. Star Wars has it's almost simplistic in a
It
lot of
is. Well, that's
ways.
the thing is it is the almost the prototypical space opera. I mean, it's not literally the prototypical
Yes.
space opera. That's actually Lensman. That's actually literally the original space opera.
There's a simplicity to Star Wars. I don't mean that in any way as a criticism. I mean it as actually as a compliment.
Yeah, it
And Hero System is too complex to capture that.
Eric, the word you're looking for is elegance.
Thank you.
And I mean that in the mathematical sense.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
It just hit me. It's like, oh, it's elegant. It's what the word we're both looking for. It's elegant. And that is actually the word I would use to describe the feng shui game system as a whole. It's an elegant game
Yeah.
system. And
There's a certain elegance in the mechanics of Godlike you could get away with it. It's just the character creation is really in depth. Not Hero System in depth, but really in depth.
yeah, well, that's the thing is that the reason I think feng shui would work for it is because the characters you build characters by choosing an archetype, and that is what Star Wars is about. The characters are all
Yeah.
archetypical, in
Yes.
the good way. Um, so yeah, Star Wars, GURPS Star Wars, no. They've
Yeah.
never put one out because I'm
Well,
certain
probably
that if
because
I will say
Lucasfilm will be
this,
like hovering over their shoulders the
if
whole time.
LucasArts said, hey, would you guys want to put out a Star Wars book, you know, for GURPS, they would say yes. We would happily do that because if they get to have the opportunity to don't have to spend a lot of money for it, they would do it because because Steve Jackson Games will put out any supplement, put out a supplement for any world that they can do so without having to spend huge amounts of money for licensing fees.
Like they did GURPS Ogre.
Yeah, well, that's because Steve Jackson Games wrote Ogre.
Did they?
Ogre's yeah, it's a Steve Jackson
I
Games game.
did not know that. Huh. Okay.
Same people who made Car Wars.
I didn't know that. Huh. Okay. Shows you the last time I played Ogre or Car Wars.
Yep, that's where Steve Jackson Games started with those two games.
Huh.
The more you know. Dun, 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 dun.
Star Rainbow.
All right, we're running a bit long here at this point. We could go on the two of us can go on for hours of this sort of thing. So,
Yes.
but we probably should wrap things up here.
So I am hungry.
Yeah, because Eric needs food, and there's some other things I want to take care of. At any rate, guys, thanks for listening. I hope you all had fun. We did. If you have any questions, feedback, criticism, etc., you can, as always, leave them in the comments section on mechagm.blogspot.com, or you can email us at surlygrognards@yahoo.com. You can find me on Twitter at mechagm, or on Facebook or Google+. There I'm Peter Bowman. You can find Eric's work as on the webcomic Boston Arcanum. That's at bostonarcanum.com. I think that covers basically everything as usual. So is there any last thoughts you have on superhero games, Eric?
Other than they're awesome, and I honestly I haven't played enough of them. The more I think about it, um, that will hopefully change.
So thanks for listening, guys. Take care, be safe, and keep on gaming, guys. We'll see you guys next week when we have a new topic, which I'm sure we'll come up with during the week. Take care, guys, and we'll see
Possibly
you.
the day of.
We never do that, Eric.
Never. No. We plan everything extensively. It's what we do.
And for our next amazing lie, good night, everybody.
We'll talk to you guys later. Have a good night.